Welcome everyone to another episode of the Biohackers Water Cooler. Today I'm so excited because we have a special treat for you. We have our guest Mark Squibb, who is an oxygen guru, serial entrepreneur, inventor, and we're going to be talking about how to optimize your tissue oxygenation, how to recover from fatigue, tune your brain, and maintain vitality. Mark Squibb is the inventor of the Live O2 oxygen training system, which is an energy supercharger for every system in your body. Most users experience a 5 to 15 improvement in brain performance in a week and roll back health tissues about 15 to 25 years in a span of only 3 months. I'm going to hand over the mic now to Steven to continue this introduction and introduce Mark to us, to our viewers and listeners.
Thank you, Fernando from Orlando. So I'm really excited about this podcast because the LiveO2 apparatus is not something that you see in most gyms, corporations, et cetera. But it's, as far as bang for your buck in this biohacking space, I'd put it up there with any other modality. So it's really important for our audience to hear what the benefits this are, look into it, because it's not way out of reach of what a consumer would invest in something for optimal health. Certainly what somebody would have to deal with if they got sick, that this could prevent. So this LiveO2 apparatus is one of only two things that I don't have in my home that I really want, and that's limited just because of space, which we're figuring out, and I'm going to solve that issue. The other is a cold plunge, which I'll have towards the beginning of May. So really excited, Mark, for you to kind of explain what the LiveO2 system is and all the benefits and some of the protocols. We don't have all day, obviously, but just to whet the appetite for our listeners to take a deep dive and look into LiveO2 and kind of figure out where they could try one maybe in their area, if that's even a possibility, and kind of talk about maybe how many are out there now. So Mark and I met we've seen each other at several biohacking conferences. Mark's got a great reputation. He's a genius. Not only has he invented this incredible device, but he's a master of a lot of topics that, if you get to know him, sage guru for a lot of things. So Mark, welcome to the Biohackers Water Cooler. I'm excited for you to introduce our listeners to LiveO2 system and share some of those benefits with us. Thank you.
Well, thanks. Glad to be here. Well, let me just start with a real simple personal introduction. I got into developing this technology because my oldest son was injured. I'll call it a chemical injury. And, he had, I'll call it a loss in some brain function. And I was like, oh, as a dad, you're like, oh shit. And so I did an experiment on Monday on myself and him where I was just experimenting with the adaptive contrast, which is a fancy way to say you switch your air supply from low oxygen or high altitude to high oxygen. We did a neurological panel on Monday. And this is a formal neurological panel like the Navy SEALs and the combat folks use pre and post mission. So it's not a simple test. So he was 11 years old at the time. And so on Monday, yeah, he scored very poorly. And on Wednesday, 2 days later, he was at or about what you'd call normal, but not optimal. Okay, over the next probably 7 years, he's an athlete. He trained it because he found when he used the system to prepare for his athletics events, he always ended up kicking ass, and he liked to kick ass, and he still does. And so, but I watched his neurological performance completely recover over the next roughly 6 years. Okay, so this is a really powerful message. Is like, okay, well, people get injured, they lose brain function, they have concussions and stuff. So we started doing experiments with concussions, and we were seeing people recover from, or have, I'll call it restoration of optimal brain function in an afternoon. So I was like, what the world is going on here? And I really kind of started out using it as a personal tool. The other thing was when I did the experiment with myself, from Monday to Wednesday, again, I was like, well, what's going on here? I took the same test myself, and, his improved probably, I don't know, 50 to 60% in terms of his subnormal or deficiency. But mine. I mean, my neurological panel score went up 17% after one workout.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And so we started testing this. And, now we've got some data coming in from universities where we're seeing, if you just if their light's kind of like a pulse oximeter and you shine a light into the tissue, a normal athlete, when they go out to compete, they'll have 60% saturation. Okay. After somebody trains on LiVO2, their tissue saturation will go to 80%.
Wow.
Okay, meaning that they're starting their competition with 20% more oxygen available, which is a very huge increase in energy substrate. And I might be able to share this. I think I saw it on my desktop, but I did the same thing with one of these probes attached to my head. And at the end of the workout, I had a 20% higher concentration of oxygen in what's left of my brain.
Wow.
Okay. And so, yeah, I think I can pull that up if you guys want to see it,
Yeah.
just for fun.
Yeah, screen
Stand
share
by.
in the device itself too, so you can kind of explain the contrast and how it works with the bag in the air as well. That'd be great.
Yeah, stand by. I think
I'm just
Sorry, I don't mean
fascinated. I'm looking on your website here under the experiments part and seeing even the Parkinson's before and after training motion experiment. This is amazing.
Yeah, that's why I was saying, like, bang for your buck versus what's out there. And this does fall within the realm of consumer availability. It's not a $50,000 product. It's not a $60,000 product. It's attainable by, average Americans.
Yeah. While Mark's looking for that, I'm gonna share my screen here so that I people see what I see here on my end. So here's a testimonial of someone with Parkinson, and here is one where a veteran's paralysis reversed within 5 years, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, so that would be Ben Menifee. He was injured. He had a brain bleed due to a freak accident in Afghanistan. We just did a full day taping with him where he went from being getting around in a wheelchair to basically driving a tractor and having completed his barn dominium. So we'll have I'll call it a full documentary, like a docu-series, coming out on him within probably 30 to 45 days. So I mean, his story. I mean, when the people saw that were videoing this, saw what he went through in his human story, the freaking cameramen had tears. They were bawling like babies. It was totally amazing. And so, and that's back to what the oxygen does. And I don't know if I can share. I've got my.
Yeah, you can share.
Okay, let me see if I can get this share going on my screen. Yes. Okay, this will stop the others. That's fine. Window here. All right, and this is just kind of geeking out if you guys can see this. So are you able to see my screen share yet?
Not yet, because Fernando's is still up. There you
Yeah,
go. So
try that now.
Well, the problem it's asking me is this: it says I've got to end my browser session. So is there a way I can send this to somebody and you guys can share it from
You can
your
put it in the
side?
chat, or yeah, put it in the
Okay,
chat.
stand by.
And while you're doing that, I'll share my screen here again one more time. This is great. The power of oxygen and the body being oxygenated. PTS recovery, 2-year update. So it seems like you've been doing a lot of work with veterans.
Yeah, we have, the same. Oh, the veterans that we work with are, pretty much universally, it's 100% in terms of success rate in them having improved or restored quality of life. So, I mean, there's no question about, basically everybody that uses the product experiences a, significant improvement. And so like people with PTSD and that have had these injuries, because a lot of the PTSD and a lot of the military injuries are, after they've been, had a series of concussions. So when you, sort of help them recover from the concussion, Oh, come on. I'm sorry. I'm multiplexing in terms of trying to drag the picture over into
Yeah,
the.
while you do that, I'll just talk to Steven so you can focus. Steven, check this out. Recently, I just connected with someone who's an expert in helping people recover or get better if they have Parkinson's disease. And we had no idea that Live 2 helped with that as well. So I'm excited to bring Live 2 to my Parkinson's mastermind as a solution to implement.
I'm going to have to apologize. I don't think I can get this share because I'm in by my browser, but let me
Okay.
give you the summary of that video. So when we did, and we've reproduced this a few times. So when somebody with Parkinson's uses the product, they'll usually experience, I don't know, at least a 50% reduction in their tremor symptoms by the time they get a step off the system.
Wow.
And when we've done neurological panels with individuals with this, the results will last probably 4 to 5 days. So we've had people actually choose to discontinue medication because they no longer needed pharmaceuticals to remediate this. And there also seems to be a tendency of that oxygenation helping them, detox and maintain their, quality of life over time. So, back to the principle here is like whenever you enhance or improve the oxygen level in the body, you're producing energy, and the body just naturally does everything better. And if it's trying to overcome some sort of challenge like a disease condition, then it'll do it better. So let me kind of jump into how it works. So I use the phrase adaptive contrast, which is confusing, but what I discovered when my son was first ill is like I went up to the mountains. I live high in the Rocky Mountains, and we go up to like 10, 12,000 feet. And while I was up there banging up the mountain, I'm like, wow, I can hear my heartbeat in my head. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool? So anyway, so when you hear your heartbeat in your head, what your body's done is it approximately quadruples. That means 4 times more blood is getting squirted through your brain. Okay. And your lungs and your kidneys and your liver. So when you're in that state of like heartbeat in the head, the body's moving vastly more blood than normal. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if you could take that 4 times more blood and supercharge it with more oxygen? Well, it turns out if you can switch to a rich oxygen supply by throwing a switch, you can actually do that. So when you throw the switch on Live 2, you'll get 6 times more oxygen in the 4 times more blood. Now, by oxygen, I mean in the plasma, meaning the water, as opposed to the erythrocytes, red blood cells. So basically, you get 6 times more oxygen and 4 times more blood. So that creates a brain tissue oxygenation event of up to 24 times normal.
Wow.
Okay, so if there's any part of the brain or even the body that's not working right, because I so wish I could share this graphic because it shows this actually happening in real time. Maybe we can edit this in later on. But when you go through the cycle from the beginning of the workout to the end of the workout, it shows my brain is using 15 or so percent more oxygen at the end of the workout than at the beginning without me, after I'm done, which correlates roughly to the brain able to make about 15% more energy, which corresponds almost directly to the measured improvement in intelligence and neurological function. So, back to the Parkinson's, which is, okay, if you're taking any organ and you're enabling it to make energy better, okay, if it's trying to heal, it's going to heal better. So if you go back to the Ben story, who had a very, very severe brain injury, okay, his brain was able to heal better than it could with like a corresponding technology because he did side by side or sequential comparisons with like HBOD or hyperbaric. He did, I don't know, 70 or something sessions. And then when he moved to Live 2, his hyperbaric result, it just turbocharged the results and he began making progress a lot faster. So, and this is internally with respect to his perspective, it was like he went from being an injured veteran to an ass kicking athlete again, or at least that's the way his persona and his energy went at it, which he was now looking, okay, how can I push myself? How can I do better? And so, I'll call it emotionally, and, from I mean, he still wasn't, a spring chicken, and he still had some disability, but his world changed. He was back to that ass kicker that, deployed to Afghanistan as a warrior. And I mean, he's a warrior to begin with, but for anybody that's in that warrior mentality that wants to maintain themselves, yeah. Or if there's somebody that's got an injury that wants to heal, yeah, that's what happens. So anyway, I don't know. It's just that whole deal about, kind of trying to live the best you can and feel the best you can. Like I just saw you clip through another page. One of the guys on there, Steve Rodriguez, I believe is probably a mutual contact, but
Yeah.
Steve on the leftmost right there.
Yeah.
Steve went through the same transformation. He was having some personal challenges, former veteran, a lot of pain, a number of other issues that I won't mention, but more or less within a couple of weeks, many of those things, if not all of them, simply recovered, and he was back to being the same sort of very entertaining character that Steve Rodriguez always was. Okay, but the things that had bothered him as he came out of his service, they pretty much went away.
Nice. So can you describe how someone utilizes the system? I mean, here's the graphic where you have the mask here and the tube.
Right.
You have the bag behind them. Can you
Yeah,
kind of
just
describe
stay on
how-
that picture of the girl, and I'll talk you through it.
Perfect.
Okay, so basically what the system does is we control what you breathe while you work out. Okay, so you put the mask on, and then there's a switch that lets you select whether you're breathing simulated high altitude air. So our most recent version of the product will let you work out at, I'll call it 10,000 feet of simulated altitude thereabouts. And with the extreme version, you can go up all the way to about 24,000 feet of simulated altitude, which will truly kick your ass. So you can challenge yourself with the low oxygen air, and it's like when you're at 10,000 feet, it's like, well, at or about, Pikes Peak, maybe a little less. But when you crank it up, it's extremely challenging. So if you're doing just light workout, it's hard on you. Back to the story of Ben. So Ben was, basically hemiplegic or half paralyzed his left side. So only part of his muscles were working, but he could use that high altitude to enable him to get his heart rate up really high, because he was doing whatever amount of work he could at a simulated high altitude. So he had no problem getting his heart rate up. So when he switched back and, switched to the oxygen, he got that super blast of oxygen that reached his brain. And, literally within, I don't know, 2 workouts or something like that, his big problem when he started was fatigue. His fatigue was resolved. He called me the second week after he started using Live O2. He said, Mark, I mowed my yard in one pass. Okay, I couldn't really understand that because I didn't know what it felt like for him emotionally and physically to be able to go outside, to be unable to go outside and mow the yard. But to hear somebody on the phone, being excited about having the juice to mow the yard when they couldn't mow the yard for 3 years prior, I mean, that made me feel good.
Wow.
So, some of the other stories to go, back to the folks in the service, we've done pop-ups where we've done help people with post-traumatic stress disorder, and basically we do 5 days. We've done 5-day sessions. They come in, we set them up with a little diet, and we start kicking their ass the first day. And, by the 5th day, we do the neurological panels, dramatic changes and improvements to their performance physically, but they say, I feel normal.
Wow.
And that's happened. I mean, it's not perfect, but probably 80 to 90% of all of the people that have gone through the concussion protocol, they say, within a couple of days or within, like a week of, going hard, that they feel, I'll call it normal. They may not be optimal, but they're so much better that they report their quality of life is much improved.
The typical session is how long, Mark?
Well, it depends. Our normal, like for beginners, we say about 15 minutes. And the big thing with the system is it is so powerful that, for beginners, we like to ease them into it. And, since, we mostly distribute to home users and stuff, it's like, well, you don't have to be in a hurry. So it's like, well, the first week is kind of training wheels. And if somebody's got a history of being an athlete, then we'll increase their workout every day. And the most important thing is to help them, become comfortable, so that when they do open up the throttle, they emotionally and psychologically feel it's been a good experience. So creating that good experience. But if we're working with somebody like Steven, is like, okay, you've been an athlete all your life and you like to work out, you know what it feels like. You've used the product a bunch of times, I think, haven't you?
Yep. Yeah.
um but you come off and you feel good. But a lot of people, and we've got also recovery graphs about people that have had respiratory infections, flu, cold. And if you do the energy, and this is extracted from Manfred von Arden's book, but if you take a look somebody's energy as they've just come down with a cold or a flu, their energy production will drop to about 50%. Okay, if you put them on Livo 2 for a standard 15-minute workout, you do their energy budget, their energy's not only gone to 100%, but it's gone to about 115%.
Mm.
It's awesome.
Okay. Okay, so what happens is you restore their energy production, but if you work them out a couple more times, within about 5 days, their energy production goes to 140%.
Wow.
Because okay, so what happens there is that lung injury from the respiratory process basically interferes with gas transfer. But when you punch through that and you get enough oxygen in the system, then the immune system kicks on, and that extra 40% of energy that they're creating is used to help the body recover from whatever's ailing it. So that's, so like in terms of injury recovery, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to drift off, but
That's
the model here is healing from anything is a performance challenge. Okay, so when you do something like Livo 2 that jacks up your oxygen level, if your body's got healing to do, it will do it more, it will do it faster, and it will do it with less discomfort than it would normally. So, that's what happens is people like, oh gosh, I don't want to be a big athlete. I'm, whatever, because they hear the feature about the performance training. But what they don't realize is if they're sick in any way, you know, their body has a performance challenge to overcome. And so when people that are trying to recover or just, and I'll get into the, just staying healthy part in a minute. But what we find is that anybody that's trying to heal from anything, you name it, they will heal more, better, faster, and have better quality of life, no matter what's wrong with them, just by maximizing this oxygen equation. Because maximizing the oxygen maximizes their body's ability to make energy, so it can do whatever it needs to do better and faster.
This is wonderful. I'd like for you to go over this page here I'm about to share, the functional age reversal. And here in the bottom it says that the regular Livo 2 use enabled Jeff, the client, to roll back at least 15 years of age-related health issues.
Okay. So I met Jeff back, I guess, probably a decade ago. We're out in the Everglades on a little place called Little Rabbit Key. Anyway, I was out there with Dakota. Anyway, we met him on an island, and we're basically cooking fish, and so I caught a mess of fish and fed the island. But anyway, so we got started talking to Jeff, and he's like, "Oh man, I got so many problems." I'm like, I might be able to help you. He looked at me because I was just this crazy fisherman on an island. And so he bought the product eventually. And he called me. He's like, Mark. I'm like, so yeah, how you feeling, Jeff? Great. I had to get a divorce. Why? My wife didn't want to have all that sex. I'm like, I'm sorry, Jeff. He says, no, it's fine. Okay. But yeah, the fun part of this is like, okay. And I said, Jeff, so, if you had to tell me, if you had your whole list of health problems, uh, and you had to say, how long ago was it in your lifespan that, your list of health issues was as it is today? He says, somewhere between 15 and 25 years. And I was hanging out with him last winter down in the Keys, and he's got one down in his basement. And he's like one of our strongest advocates. You probably met him. And but it's like, he's kicking ass and taking names, and he was bragging about, okay, he's back to his college weight, and he's actually at or above his college performance, and he's 50 years old, 45, 50 years old now. Okay, for a 50-year-old to be running around bragging about kicking ass and taking names like he did in college, that's a success story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
So it is true then. So our previous guest in the podcast here, I asked him that question because he was talking about how his product helps people have a lot of energy. So I asked him the question: have any clients complained that their spouse complained that too much energy, too much sex? He said no, but here you are saying that someone actually did complain. This is great.
Good point. Good point. Yeah.
Well,
True.
Steve Rodriguez had the same complaint. We developed this trademark, from what Steve said. So you can personally verify that. It's a pretty common point, but the whole conversation about reproduction and I'll call it humor aside. We spend a lot of energy at Livo2 in terms of building systems and protocols that enable people to, do better. So we've got a platform which we call Prime that has specific protocols around neurological support. It's got a protocol for pelvic health, meaning pelvic floor health, which applies equally to men and women, with respect to libido, as well as maintaining, I'll call it optimal healthy function with respect to prostate and other organs, which is really just different strategies for detoxification and regional. Here's another one. About a decade ago, when my house burned down pursuant to forest fire, I'd sit at my desk and look down, there's a big pile of hair. I'm like, oh shit, my hair's falling out. And I said, well, I need to find a protocol to keep my hair. And turns out that if you take a little niacin before you train, niacin and some chili pepper, and basically cause the skin to flush, what you're doing is you're causing the capillaries in the skin and implicitly the hair follicles to open up. And when you oxygenate those generously, then what'll happen is the hair will grow. I didn't get the color back, but boy, they stopped jumping ship. You end up with, the ability to maintain more youthful appearance. So the big thing about the Prime is it's basically a protocol platform or protocol reservoir repository for, I think, about 18 different protocols, which span everything from neurological conditions to pelvic floor. There's a protocol up there for that enables people to discontinue use of addictive substances in about 48 hours.
Wow, this is amazing.
Nice.
So
How can we get more people to get their their sessions? Because here I'm looking on your page here for the doctors or practitioners, so people can find one in their areas, and there are some states where there's none.
yeah, so well, it depends on the states. If you go to livo2.com/map, and we
Oh,
have it where
I
we
think
promote.
where I'm trying to get to, Mark, I think is the huge opportunity for practitioners and doctors and health experts to be, to have one of these in their practices, so that people that come into your website can visit their practice.
Right. So yeah, so we do have a program, so when somebody goes through Livo2, what where they get a system, having a system and being able to train somebody are two different levels of proficiency. So even doctors, they're used to quote unquote a treatment modality. So we like to spend a few months with them, basically helping them understand what the product does from a personal perspective, before it's before it makes a lot of sense. So we've got a really good training staff, and I'll call it a apprenticeship kind of program that enables our practitioner community, or I call it practitioner. We got a lot of coaches, individuals that just want to help their neighbors kind of learn the ropes. And that's a lot what the prime.livo2 site is about also, because there's courses up there for how to do the different protocols so that somebody that wants to help others can learn what they need to do so safely and effectively before they jump off the deep end.
Makes sense. God, I've got a couple of friends with really, really, really bad asthma. It seems like this would be a huge benefit to them, but I'm curious on when they go to the low altitude air, whether they would start coughing or wheezing.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to explain the paradox.
There we go.
If you ask your friends that have asthma when their asthma goes away, and what they will tell you is when they're outside at high altitude, their asthma generally doesn't bother them.
Huh.
And the reason for that is bronchodilation is a compensatory reflex. And so like with asthma, you're really dealing with the bronchial tubes, closing off. Okay, but if they're outside and they're either involved in an aggressive challenge, particularly in a low oxygen environment or simulated altitude environment, then the low oxygen will cause the body to open up bronchi. So the surprising thing about asthma is that when people with asthma use LiVO2, particularly on the simulated altitude, it opens up their lungs. And once you can open their lungs by that challenge, then you can deliver bursts of oxygen. So they generally report that their asthma presentation is substantially remediated by training, with an emphasis on using the low oxygen side of the system.
Huh.
Which makes no sense. It's certainly that, well, they're not getting enough oxygen, so then you would challenge them by taking some away. Makes no sense. But when you think about it as a challenge, causing the body to react or respond to a challenge by adapting to the new environment, then for whatever reason, that's what works. The other one that's kind of similar would be preparing to go to high altitude. So when people train on LiVO2, we actually had Rich Berkowitz. He's got a video up there. He basically flashed Camp 4, which is the staging, basically hiking up to the staging area for Everest. And he was the only person in the group that had trained on LiVO2, but he was also the only person in the group that didn't need oxygen to get there. And all the young kids were jealous about how he did this.
Wow. That's amazing.
So, and we get, pretty much all of our users, they come to Colorado and they go skiing, and they really annoy all their, I'll call it, colleagues, because they just kick ass.
Wow.
This is amazing. I gotta try this. I just have to. I have a question regarding this page here, and I'm gonna share my screen one more time. For those of you listeners, apologize. Please check out YouTube or our other places where we have this on video. But this is the science behind LiVO2 and the findings of Dr. Manfred and in his book, Oxygen Multi-Step Therapy. What is oxygen multi-step therapy?
Well, let me introduce Dr. Manfred von Ardenne. So Manfred von Ardenne was one of the smartest guys to hit the planet. And he invented color TV and a whole raft of other things. The guy has over 1,000 patents.
Wow.
So
can we have him on the podcast? Can you introduce us? We want to have him on the podcast.
I would love to introduce him. He's like my hero. Okay. Or he's one of them. There's another guy named Ravici. But these two guys, they're like, if I had anybody that I had the privilege to meet, it would be them. But anyway, so what happened was he basically got kidnapped by the Russians, and he was going downhill because the stress of, being in the middle of the Cold War and being, absconded. And they told him, you need to invent all this stuff to help with the Russian Cold War effort in terms of technology development. I mean, he was that smart. But as he was going through this, he's like, my life really sucks. And so he started to, experiment with oxygen. And what he found was that if he just breathed oxygen, it didn't do much. But if he were to exercise with oxygen, then it would radically change his body. So he ended up accumulating, many years worth of work. And he wrote a book called Oxygen Multi-Step Therapy. And so he documented what he did was he put basically platinum probes in people, and he could measure the amount of oxygen tissue was using before and after, doing his protocol, which was oxygen only. So he did large quantities of oxygen, like 45 liters per minute, 5 liters per minute, etc. And he went through, and he was the first to document, and we've got this reproduced on our website someplace, talking about, you take older people, you train them with his oxygen multi-step therapy, and you could measure a 17% improvement in their cognitive performance over a period of weeks. So anyway, he did this, and he did a beautiful job of documenting it. So you present this book. I usually have a copy on my desk. If you present it to somebody, I will explain this book is a 70 napper, meaning that if you try to read it, you will fall asleep at least 70 times. But when you're not asleep, you're just like dazed and confused, because the brain bending scope of the science and the results are there. And so, like, for example, the whole discovery that somebody's energy budget will increase by 10% after they train on oxygen, and then in a few days it'll go up 140% if they have a cold or flu. It was amazing. Then he did some other, and we've got these documented on the website, but basically he also did studies of people that were undergoing cancer treatment. So, like, for example, somebody that has a surgery, and this is across the board, not just cancer surgery, is after they have the surgery, as a result of the drugs and this anesthesia and stuff like that, when they come out of surgery, their energy will drop to about 50% of normal.
Wow.
And over a period of 2 to 4 weeks, it will return to normal. So that recovery curve is directly proportional to their body's ability to produce energy, which only comes back as they recover. What he discovered for radiation, chemo, and surgery is that if you do this procedure with oxygen multi-step, their energy bounces back immediately.
Wow.
And their recovery time for everything goes down proportional to the amount of energy they're able to restore. Because if you think about the healing, their body has work to do to regrow stuff. And if their body's got more energy capacity, it will get that work done faster. And the person will be less miserable as their body's going through that healing process. So what he found, and here's another one that was just a mind blower in this book. Again, this is one of, I probably took 5 naps on this one. Was he did autoimmune testing, and he took blood samples, and if somebody had an autoimmune challenge, that the use of the oxygen training would increase the white blood cell count 17% plus or minus in just a few workouts. Okay, which is okay. If you go back to the cold or flu, the fact that the body immediately responds to the surplus of oxygen by increasing the white blood cells, that's a direct measure of how much the body spins up its auto defense capability. And, it's just measurable. And so that it almost directly, correlates to the acceleration in healing time.
Yeah.
So, we've got some, and you asked this question, I think right now we've got somewhere north of 10,000 systems out there. And the weird thing about the people that have Live O2 systems, they just don't get sick. Or they do, but it's not bad enough to be really a problem. I'm not saying they're immune to anything, but it's just that their immune systems and their core vitality is spun up enough that, they're just more resilient, so that a lot of the stuff that takes down and bothers other people and makes them sick and causes severe health issues doesn't tend to happen. And that's because they maintain their bodies, or I would assert that they maintain their bodies in a higher level of readiness. So when the stress or whatever goes on, they just don't get hurt as bad.
Right. Yeah. It's, the minimum effective dose, like if you were just going to use this, the most efficient way, meaning the fewest amount of workouts per week to get the maximum benefit, what would you say or recommend to people to do? Would it be 3 times a week, 4 times a week?
Yeah, I'd say if you really wanted, if you're, pressed, I'd say three 15-minute workouts a week would be, I won't call that minimum effective, but that would be a minimum to stay at 80% of your game. So, my favorite workout is I'll do 45 minutes 3 times a week, 4 times a week. If I do that, then I'm on it.
Yep.
But I use it as my primary workout. My normal workout is probably, if it's a 45-minute workout, I'll do 42 minutes at a simulated altitude of about 24,000 feet, and the other 4 minutes would be recovery on oxygen.
Wow, really? That seems like it'd be crazy taxing or tiring or whatever.
Now you come off, I come off fresh and ready to rock and roll. And that's the
Wow.
other thing. A lot of people say, "Oh gosh, that sounds really intense," but all of our athletes and even the people that use it is that people think about, "Oh gosh, I'm going to work out or I'm going to exercise." They say, "I'm going to be so sore." Um, and for the most part, we'll take people that are sore before they started their workout, and by the time they finish with Live O2, they won't be sore anymore.
Beautiful.
Man, this is like hearing the ice bath benefits, but without the ice bath.
Well, yeah, we're actually some friends of ours are working on ice bath protocols. So what we're doing is we're merging, the Live O2 with ice bath, with hyperthermia, and these other things. So again, all of so the way the ice bath works basically is that you do a cold plunge, and the cold plunge causes the body basically to channel or direct all of the blood flow to and through the core organs. So basically, Trip is on deck to produce a protocol that says, okay, well, let's do that alongside or simultaneous with modulating the respiratory oxygen contact between high and low. So anyway, so the point would be there's ways to merge all of these things. And the same thing with hyperthermia, so if we're doing autoimmune modulation, and all these protocols are over on our Prime server, we can't put them public because we don't want to be seen or make public assertions of, I'll call it, health effects that would be considered medical. But like with respect to the hyperthermia protocol was developed by Manfred von Ardenne, which is if you bring the core body temperature to a particular height simultaneous with a high oxygen level, that's the main thing that provokes this bloom of white blood cells in the system to optimize the autoimmune function.
Gotcha.
So anyway, so I didn't mean to do a loop on you, but the point would be when you talk about ice bath or hyperthermia, once you get into the Live O2 world, it's like, well, there's a whole bunch of different things that you can do where we blend or leverage the physiology of other things like ice baths with Live O2 so that you can get the product of the results of the protocols as opposed to, just doing them one at a time.
Man, this is amazing. I'm just letting my brain be bent over your words, and I'm loving this. So, for people to get their, hands on one of the systems, is it easy? Can people just, go to your website and?
Yeah, a lot of people go to the website to do it. The best thing to do would be call us because our phone number's up at the top of the website. And so, we have a fabulous team of people that, basically they can help you get into the right system. So, are you a performance athlete? Are you just somebody that's trying to maintain health? What's your budget? So our team will try to position you into the right product. And then that boils down to helping us understand what your goals are. So now, if you're a pro athlete or somebody that's got a performance objective or that wants, I'll call it, higher level performance, we usually guide people to our extreme system, which is the one that has the high end or more challenging altitude setting. Like Steve, I'd probably send him over there because I know he's an athlete. Fernando, I'd probably send you there too, just because I suspect based on your character that you're
I
going to
am.
want to kick ass and take names.
Soccer
Okay.
player, Mr. Endurance.
Oh yeah. So, and you're gonna love it. You get on there the first time, it'll kick your ass up between your shoulder blades, but you're gonna come off feeling like you probably had the best workout of your life, and you're gonna be ready to go out and rock and roll on the field. Then we've got other users, which are people that are trying to overcome health issues, trying to get back in the game, or just trying to whatever. And then we've got a lower grade system that has a ceiling altitude of like 12,000 feet, and that's sort of for maintenance and recovery. I mean, it still works for performance training, but just it doesn't have the sharp edge that the other system do. So we call that LiveO2 with adaptive contrast would be our lower level system, and LiveO2 Extreme is the higher level system.
Cool.
Awesome. And do we have a gift for our audience here?
Yeah. So anybody that comes in within the next 30 days of the podcast, so I'll let you guys pick the date. We'll give them a 5% discount on their system. Okay. And that would be going to livo2.com/water cooler.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark.
This is great. I can't wait. I'm so excited. And it's oxygen. That's another reason I'm so excited. It's oxygen. So it's a machine system, and it's boils down to oxygen, which is, so I'm just loving this conversation.
All it is tricking the body into blasting as much oxygen as possible to the tissues.
Mm.
And so the trick mechanism is super simple. We put the body on we start out with a, kind of a normal warm up, but after we get the body warmed up, we put it in a simulated low oxygen environment that causes the body to say, oh crap, there's not enough oxygen in the air. So it will optimize the systemic respiration, meaning it'll open up the blood, you'll maximize the ejection fraction of the heart. It opens up all the vessels or arteries so that the body is moving as much blood as possible. It opens up the oxygen delivery process. Then you throw a switch, and the next breath gives the body a roughly 4 times in the normal, and that 5 times burst of oxygen, when it goes into the already optimized for delivery, you're optimized for content. So it gives a simultaneous maximum of circulating blood and oxygen in the blood. And like for the brain example I was explaining before, you can get, 24 times normal for a brief period of time. And that 24 times normal blast makes all the difference in the world in terms of helping stuff heal, opening the system up. Sorry, I don't mean to be over. I just wanted to make it simple about how it works.
Mark, one question I would have, since it helps with so many different markers, it seems like, do you see any bumps from people that wear biostraps, whatever the what's that one that Tony Robbins,
heart rate variability,
the Oura Ring, the biostrap? Do you see
across the board,
or deep sleep, any of that stuff, or
across the board, all of them improve?
Okay, that's significant.
Deep sleep, REM sleep, heart rate variability, basically what any sort of marker that's adversely affected by stress. So when you increase the body's ability to make energy, you're increasing the body's ability to handle stress of any sort. And so any indicator that suggests that, stress or that adversely affects stress, you'll see that indicator improve. So HRV is one, SDNN, standard deviation from norm to norm, will improve. But the biggest one would be just tissue oxygen availability. So in our recent tests with the University of Minnesota, the tissue oxygen availability increases from 60% in Olympic athletes to 80%, which is obvious increase in energy substrate. So their performance goes up. But with respect to just people getting through the day, or who are training aggressively or have any sort of challenge, they'll notice their ability to tolerate stress, and any markers that go along with that will improve.
This is great. Awesome. Okay, before we're going to be ending here soon, Mark, thank you so much. Before we end, we need to go over the C word here. I found this on your website, and my mom had cancer. So it whenever I read about it, it has a special place in my heart. Can you please explain why this oxygen remediates conventional cancer therapy?
Yeah, sure. But I have to say something real important. This goes back to the purpose of this article. I called it Warburg Reloaded. Okay, because there are a lot of people out there that say stuff that's just flat wrong. Okay, and so Otto Warburg won the Nobel Prize in 1929 or something like that for explaining the anaerobic character, meaning oxygen. Cancer doesn't use oxygen. So when you take a tissue and you compromise or reduce its oxygen supply for long enough, then the tissue will devolve to rely only on anaerobic or no oxygen metabolism or glucose metabolism. So Warburg basically proved this. So if you want cancer to thrive, you give it sugar and it grows. Okay, but the last part of his research was that he proved that oxygen has absolutely no effect on cancer cells directly, because the process of cancer evolution took cells and put them in an anaerobic environment, meaning low oxygen environment, and that once they adapted their metabolism not to need oxygen, if you gave oxygen back to them, it didn't make any difference. So the reason I make this as an important point is you got people out there that say oxygen or cancer hates oxygen. That's total bullcrap. And anybody that's actually read Warburg's work will realize that oxygen has no effect whatsoever on cancer tissues, which is why I vehemently assert that LiveO2 is not a medical device, because it's not intended and actually has no effect on cancer itself. However, if you have a body that has a parasitic invasion, and where having the healthy part of the body in kick ass and take names mode, then spinning up the immune system and having the immune system rock and roll, and also having, so if you take a lesion of any sort, and that lesion is perceived as an invader in the body, then having that lesion wrapped or surrounded by the healthiest possible tissue, and having that tissue flushed so that the metabolic waste that causes stress on the surrounding tissue gets washed out, and having that tissue as vital or as energetic as possible so that any immune system that needs to go do a job has a great staging area is very important. So what I said in this article, which is consistent with Otto von Warburg, is it's your body's job and your immune system's job to overcome any sort of disease, and the best thing you can do is maintain or optimize your systemic performance to change the balance of power in your body's favor with respect to cancer or anything else. So back to your mom, and I lost my mom to cancer too because I hadn't invented this stuff yet. But anyway, I took an energetic approach. Actually, the truth is we actually had my mom cured using some other things. I documented that case. I used pulsed electromagnetic fields. We used IV vitamin C, lipoic acid, by combining work of Panos Pappas and the Bright Spot for Health Center. Anyway, so the point would be we went through that, but I didn't have the oxygen. Now we're having the oxygen with the ability to optimize the systemic metabolism in the immune system. Cancer becomes a lot less of an issue. And with Arden's research about being able to remediate the adverse effects of energy loss subsequent to the cancer therapies, is the LiveO2 or the oxygen training gives people the ability to take the sharp edge off the adverse or side effects of the various treatments, if that's what they need to do. Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Wow, this is great information. Let's I think I'm ready to hit replay and listen to this again, because this is a wealth of knowledge. I can't wait. Looking forward to having my first workout on this on the system, and let's start closing this. Steven,
I've got one more question for you. Are there any contraindications of anybody that you wouldn't want to put on LiveO2?
Yeah, basically there's two major families of contraindications. So, and the contraindications are specific to exercise, or not to LiveO2. So, people that have various forms of anemia, which has them having fragile red blood cells. Okay, so, and this goes back to contraindications for high intensity interval training, where if you get the heart rate up and you push the blood around the vascular system hard enough that if the red blood cells are fragile, it ruptures too many, then they'll end up with a decrease in performance. Okay, so it's not about the oxygen. It's about if their red blood cells are too fragile. So in that case, what we try to do is have people titrate, meaning creep up or start out slow and pay attention to how they feel, because once they reach their, I'll call it maximum challenge potential, then they need to stay with that until their body has a chance to either clean up or find their balance. The second contraindication is that LiVo2 is profoundly effective at enabling the body to discard toxins. So if you've ever trained somebody on LiVo2, normally within about 4 minutes, you'll smell uh, or volatile toxins coming out their breath. So like, hey, you use DEET, which would be insect repellent, or you use such and such soap, or if somebody's got yeast, you can smell that on their breath. The reason
Wow.
for that is once the vascular system starts to open up, the blood and lymph will reach new tissues. And once the garbage that's in the tissue washes out, the garbage washes into the bloodstream and flows through the lungs, and the volatile stuff, the stuff that evaporates, will get blown off in the breath. Okay, so if you're training somebody and you're standing in front of them, you'll be able to smell whatever they're blowing through. Okay, which gets to the end, lets me answer your question. Okay, so some people are on various drugs like anti-seizure medications. Is when you spin the blood through the liver and kidneys, if there's any substances there that are essential for them for seizure remediation or whatever, then the liver and kidneys will filter that stuff out really fast. So for somebody who's epileptic, that's on anti-epileptic drugs and stuff like that, same recipe, which is you start them out on like a 2-minute workout, let them go to 3, let them go to 4, because you want to make sure that they're not deleting their drugs. So the other benefit of this, of course, is if you're pissed drunk and you want to be sober, just hop on and kick your ass. You'll be sober in 30 minutes.
There you go.
That's a
College
good.
students, yeah, college,
How do I know that?
college, yeah. Mark's our
This is
marketing to
wonderful.
college students. That's hilarious. All
Mark,
right, good stuff.
thank you. Thank you so much.
Ultimate hangover cure. Cool. Well,
Yeah.
Mark, thanks for joining us. Any final words, inspiration or motivation you want to share with the audience, or just last words?
Maybe if we can end on an even more fun note, maybe talk a
Sure.
little bit about how you're burning wood. I think a few moments ago you said, or some.
Oh, my wife. So yeah, we got 8 inches of snow the day before yesterday. So I got one of those fabulous spouses, and when I'm not here, she sleeps with a chainsaw. But she's good looking too.
This is great.
Yeah, so we're a house of athletes. So she does her stuff. She's, I don't know, probably a third of the way through the Appalachian Trail. So she takes our youngest son. They go hiking, and so we try to live her life. Work is the stuff we do between adventures.
Nice.
Mm,
It's
that's
awesome.
like a T-shirt or a bumper sticker
Yeah.
to have. Cool. Thanks, Mark. Steven, thanks so much for introducing us and everybody. Hit replay, go back, watch this again, listen this again, take some notes. Call Mark's salespeople and get started. This is a gift that
5%
it
off with
exists.
5% off with code water cooler.
30 days. You got 30 days. So do it. Do it now. And Steven, I think you and I can come up with even another bonus we can throw in besides the 5%. So check the show notes. Thank you, Mark. Thanks, Steven. Everybody, go out there, kick ass, take names like Mark said. And till next time, bye for now.
Thanks a lot.